You see, something is going to happen. Something wonderful.
My God, it's full of stars.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. We are continuing from the last live that we did with all of us together on Smiley Face Killers. If you haven't caught the first one, I highly suggest to go back and check that one out after this. In this series, and I'm thinking it would be 3 to 4 episodes, you're going to explain something like what I kind of went over in the first one, just in case you didn't catch it. I have a mixture of Smiley Face Killers, or cases that we think are. Lisa has 6 of them from Austin, Texas. It was really kind of her idea that even spurred this, because she was telling me that she, for like the last year, has been telling me, for at least the last 6 to 8 months, was telling me that she swears that these are probably SFK victims. And there's been like 1 or 2 channels that I have seen come out and actually start mentioning them, but like nothing too serious. And we're like, maybe we should really start looking at these. And when I thought about doing SFK, of course I thought of my man JJ, because he's done some really great stuff on that topic on his own show. So then I hit him up, and we decided to grab some of his people that he's covered before, and then get the true crime occultist herself, BD, on for her spin on how she looks at things, and that's how we're going to do it, and that's how it was done in the first episode. So I'm just going to start it off now. I'm not going to introduce everybody. I'm pretty sure you all know who they are. If you don't, their links are already in the bottom to see their stuff and check out the stuff that they have. I guess we'll get into it first. I know we're going to start off with JJ, and his first victim, I think, is we're trying to go in chronological order as well. His victim, Todd.
Yeah, Nick, appreciate the invite back for another Smiley Face Killers conversation. Lisa, thanks again as well. I look forward to the conversation as always. And BD, I'm looking forward to some more of those forensic astrology here. So definitely looking forward to the conversation. Todd Geib being the first victim we're going to discuss today. Yeah, he was one of the canonical victims of from the Case Studies in Drowning Forensics textbook in the original cases that spurred this Smiley Face Killer theory. And he died, he was last seen June 12th, the early morning hours of June 12th, 2005. And then his body was later discovered 3 weeks later, essentially in the same spot he disappeared from, which was a field party in an apple orchard about 30 miles north of Grand Rapids, Michigan, approximately an hour and a half northwest of Lansing, Michigan. Just major cities geographically speaking near this area, because this is a very rural area. And this is a great example as well. This victim specifically, in regards to my mound theory and the theory that these Smiley Face Killer victims are simply examples of ritual human sacrifice that's occurring at ancient sites of ancient human sacrifice. These mound sites. I often get a lot of pushback for that theory, because a lot of cities that were built in and around mounds, major cities, especially areas where this has been occurring, be it Boston, Massachusetts, New York City, another Chicago, another major hotspot as of late in recent years, but actually dating back for the last 24 years, Chicago has been having a number of victims dating back to another one of the canonical cases with I believe the fellow's name was Welzine, and that was a couple a couple decades ago. So those cities that are having these victims, they're all built on these mound sites. All these cities were intentionally built on these mound sites by the folks who started America. But cities or small little rural areas like Casanova Township in the Half Moon Lake area, where Todd Geib lived, is not one of those major cities that was founded on a mound. However, it was a mound site at the Half Moon Lake Mound Group there, where Todd Geib lived on Half Moon Court was the name of the road, just adjacent to the lake. This was an area he knew very well, so he was just down the road, not even a mile from his home, at a field party when he disappeared. So this was June 12th, 2005, and Todd Geib wants to go home early around midnight from this field party where he's at with his friends and his cousin, who was his roommate. And he's I think he's 22 years old. And he fits the standard kind of description, especially the early cases. And these SFK phenomenon, they were always white males, athletic build, intelligent, outgoing folks. I think the victimology's kind of expanded a bit and evolved over time and over the different groups that are committing these crimes, the different cells, if you will. However, out of these original ones where these murders began, this ritual cult murders began, Todd Geib fits the kind of exact profile. He's 5'9", like I think 165 or so, athletic build guy, and fairly successful in his endeavors in life. Again, these aren't people that are eating Cheetos in their mother's basement, playing video games and weighing 300 pounds. That's not the victimology of these crimes, right? So Todd Geib kind of fits right in that wheelhouse. And when they find him, he's only been, according to the medical examiners, he's only been dead for 3 to 5 days. He's been missing 21 days. And those medical examiner reports continue to get even stranger relative to what actually happened here with the murder of Todd Geib, and that is because he was heavily drugged with antidepressants, not antidepressants that would be taken together, and they were 2 different drugs, and these are not antidepressants that he was prescribed. So he was not known to take any drugs either at all. So not antidepressant drugs, at least. There was a side narrative of some cocaine dealing and distribution relative to this case, where he may have been a customer of a cocaine distribution network that operated out of Lansing, Michigan. That's something the detectives had kind of tracked in this case initially, Detective Gannon and his team. However, relative to these antidepressants that Todd Geib had in the system, that's clear indication that he was drugged. However, law enforcement authorities stuck to the whole undetermined accidental, death situation, despite all the evidence. And during that, which was something they came to a conclusion, if you ask me, they came to real early in the case, because during that 3 weeks that Todd was missing, the authorities had published statements in the local news media saying that they were convinced that Todd had been hit by a car and buried in a shallow grave along the highway. They never produced a single shred of evidence, the Michigan authorities, to substantiate these claims. So it's kind of Looney Tunes that they even tried to make these claims, that they're like, oh, well, he got hit by a car and he's in a shallow grave. Meanwhile, no one knows where he's at, and he's alive by all examinations by the medical examiner later. He's alive during this time when these articles are being printed saying he's dead in a shallow grave. So the whole case surrounding Todd Geib there's a lot of issues, but in the end, they don't want to change. The Michigan authorities clearly don't want to change their opinion on the death of Todd Geib, but all indications are of murder. And in fact, in the Smiley Face Killers TV series, they did a great example of the forensic analysis conducted by the Kevin Gannon and his team of detectives. The forensic analysis they did in their textbook, they did that video representation of that in the TV series, and they do a good really great job showing that there's no way Todd Geib could have been in this small pond dead for 3 weeks. Area had been searched, people had been fishing, people had been scuba diving in this pond, and again, all the forensic analysis of the body indicates that he was only dead 3 to 5 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it's kind of the background on Todd Geib as far as the absolute fact that he was not an accidental drowning by any means. This man was murdered, and he was murdered specifically at a mound site. Again, I would assert is a great example of this ritual human sacrifice element to this SFK phenomenon.
I definitely think something is up with the mounds for sure. Yeah, I feel like that's even just an occurring kind of thing lately anyway, with stuff realizing mounds with situations. So, Lisa,
right.
Did you want to?
I was going to add a little bit of something on Todd, and it's interesting because, and it's just a little something on him. The body, like you said, it was found with his head and shoulders out of the water and the lower part of his body in the water, almost like if he was swimming, as what they said. Yep. And it had very minimal decomposition. And even though that he had been missing for about 22 days, it was found that he had only been dead at a secondary autopsy review for no more than 2 to 5 days itself. You mentioned about the alcohol in his system and then the antidepressants that were found. The antidepressants that were found, and I'll pronounce it, but I'm going to butcher them. It's diazepamine and amitriptyline. That's probably not correct at all. Sorry about that. But the first one is an FDA-approved antidepressant.
Better than I could do it.
Okay, well, good. And it's FDA approved for treatment of depression, and it's used as an off-label to treat bulimia nervosa, irritable bowel syndrome, neuropathic pain, overactive bladder, post-herpetic neuralgia, and ADHD. The second one is also an FDA approved treatment for depression itself, but as an off-label, it's used to treat chronic pain syndrome, anxiety, and insomnia. So it's interesting that these two are used, I believe, probably synergistically for a certain purpose. So what that ends up doing is that I think it was 4 years later, the Forensic Identification Profiling Laboratory took this case and they reviewed it, and they looked at the autopsy report, the recovery photos, and so forth. And they realized that they're the ones that said that, no, he had only been dead for 2 to 5 days when he was found, and he did not have any water in his lungs. So it was not accidental drowning the way that they had ruled it previously. And I believe the parents were very vocal about it as well. They did believe that he was murdered. And I think that they voiced this to the police, and police were like, no, you're not understanding it correctly. And the other thing is that the medical examiner who did the secondary review, he took it to a conference for other medical examiners to review it. And even they themselves, those medical examiners at that conference, I believe wrote or called in to ask to reopen the case because of discrepancies with the autopsy report, and the police did not.
Yeah, that's correct, Lisa. The over 200 medical examiners signed a letter saying this man was murdered, and the Michigan State Police said, don't tell us how to do our job.
Yeah.
That is actually something interesting to think about. It may not have anything to do with like any of these cases, but somebody had mentioned in the chat, like, and one of these things can knock you out. And not from like my own personal experience, but like I even remember when I was, I've mentioned before, I've been in federal prison before. People are selling everything in there. And there were some people that were on certain meds that, like, they'd cheek it or not swallow it, and they'd be selling that stuff, and people would be whacked. Like, I remember one specifically because it seemed to, like, knock people out was Seroquel. But that's also used, like, for other things. So, like, I mean, could, like, something show up that would look like an actual prescribed drug? But, like, it literally did knock you on your ass because you're not supposed to take it. Like, you could even be using stuff like that.
I think that's how they kind of wrote it off here with Geib. I think the initial medical examiners, the county medical examiner there in in rural Michigan, was kind of like, oh, well, these are prescription drugs. He probably took them because he's depressed.
Yes.
And, so I think that's an easy way to write for things that be written off. Just like finding the body in the water, it's easy to write off it's drowning, even though, like you pointed out there, Lisa, he had no water in his lungs, which all of this reminds me of Riley Strain case. That just occurred here in Nashville that we've discussed, because Riley Strain, there was news articles saying that hobos had his t-shirt, had his shirt on that he was last seen in, and just like so fake news articles kind of distracting of where this man's disappeared to, which is again the same thing happened with Geib, and then with the buried in a shallow grave along a roadside articles, and then both men had no water in their lungs.
Right.
And
he was fully clothed. That's the other thing. He was fully clothed with a wallet in his jeans pocket.
Yeah, I think the only thing Geib was missing was his cell phone. And
maybe one shoe. Didn't he make a phone call from a field saying he was in a field or something like that?
Yeah, that's so that he was last seen just before 1 o'clock in the morning on the 12th of June 2005. However, during those last few minutes before 1 o'clock, he made a number of phone calls, and then one phone call to him from his friend, and she spoke to him. Yeah, he said he was in the field, and then the call got cut off. And K9 tracked him through the K9 search party that came in immediately. His mother reported him missing that evening of the 12th. He disappeared that early morning hours. She's already in the police station reporting him as a missing person. They actually did initiate the search rather quickly in this case, and the K9s tracked his scent from that field that he was at the party up the road to the main road, and then they lost the scent at the main road. So, but it seems that Todd Geib never left that field that he made that call from, except for not his own recognizance. He actually seems like he probably left there in a vehicle, being kidnapped.
Right.
And again, there was this cocaine. There was various groups of people at this orchard party. It was an annual event in that town, so it wasn't just Todd and his friends. There was other groups at this party. One of those groups was a cocaine distribution ring out of Lansing, Michigan, according to Detective Gannon and his team. So they mentioned that in the drowning and forensics, or case studies in drowning forensics textbook. And I believe they've made statements that they even provided those names to the local authorities there in Michigan, who also told them, don't tell us how to do our job. So no one really cares. So what I'm getting at, there's a lot of details and information specifically that was seemingly carved out as fact here in the investigations around Geib's disappearance and obvious murder. No one really looked further into it, though. And that's really the root of a lot of these issues that are transpiring right now in Austin too, that are, these cases are screaming murder and at least screaming suspicious circumstances that require further investigation, and they're being written off immediately, and everyone's ignoring those additional facts, just like the GHB found in one of those victims. That's an obvious indication of grounds for further investigation.
Yes.
Lisa, did you have anything else to add?
That was it on him,
Right.
for the medical examiner.
So then I'll bring up BD's chart. We got a chart and a sigil to go over. So here we go. I'll make the screen bigger too.
Okay, so with Todd, absolutely he was kidnapped. I have that red line going across the middle, showing that's a traditional sign of a kidnapping, moon opposed Neptune. Now, the interesting thing about the moon is he was walking along Moon Road. He was going to an address at Moon Court, and there was a Half Moon Lake nearby. And so I keyed in on the moon, and sure enough, the moon delivered. It's in about the worst possible position you would want it to be in, and it represents the victim, Todd. Talk about bad moon rising. However, in this chart, this bad moon is setting, which is telling me it's the end of life here. It's and he was kidnapped, and
you know what's really interesting, BD? I hate to just interrupt, but again, I think I mentioned it in the first one. You have that 27 in there again as well.
Yep. There's 27s and a couple of. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. You went out for a minute. The moon is actually at 19, and it's exactly setting on the descendant. So that something really awful is going down, and it's violent. Unfortunately, it's a violent death. And what I see being the perpetrators, I really believe they have some association with this field party. There is a group of individuals, and it's a small, like a clannish thing, a gang is what I'm trying to say. And younger people with a strong leader. And again, and I'm going to get to the sigil in a minute, but this was a violent, brutal type of death. And I do believe it occurred in a field. Now, as for him floating, I had an interesting flash on that, and it's borne out by the horoscope here. I thought, well, if he's floating, he was floating vertically, as if he were in not a very deep body of water. He was standing, his head and his shoulders are exposed from the water, as if he were standing vertically. And I thought, you don't float like that, unless I thought, well, maybe he was frozen, and that's what threw them off from the time of death, that if he was frozen or encased in ice for a period of time. I think 21 days was the time he was missing. And so, a little further checking, Todd is shown by Saturn in Cancer. Saturn is a cold, dry planet. It represents extreme cold. Cancer is water, and Saturn in Cancer is literally ice. So it's possible that he was frozen and then placed in the lake and he started to thaw out, and that threw everybody off in terms of the rate of decomp, time of death. So that was one theory I had about the Saturn in Cancer. And also there's an issue with him. Somebody was angry. I looked at the asteroids again. I got the asteroid again that represents retaliation. He had left that party in kind of a snit, and he told somebody, "I've had enough." I think it was a phone call, one of the phone calls he made. "I've had enough." He was mad at somebody. He had had some kind of an altercation with someone, and he was disgusted and he walked off. That's why I left the party. So I believe there was something going down with this group of people that I've already described. And he actually, based on what I see from the position of another planet, pretty much after he started walking, he was stopped and picked up. Because of the way the planet is changed signs, that means something changed in what was happening. And so just there's an element of hatred, resentment, but it's I would claim a local gang is possibly responsible for this. And JJ, in that regard, I wonder, did you come across a gang called the Dealers of Death?
No, I didn't. That sounds interesting. I do agree with you, though, BD, that it does seem to, especially with the Frozen, the aspect of him being frozen.
Right.
That's a great point.
Well, I found out about this gang. They boast some 40 members and dozens of murders, which is ridiculous if they're bragging about it and they're not picked up by now. I don't know what that's about. But the leader was a man, I don't have the notes with his name. It was Jeremy, the first name Jeremy, but his sidekick, his enforcer, is a man whose nickname is Smiley with a Z, Zmiley.
Wow.
So I'm like, what is this about? And they're local to Ohio. And I believe at the time of Todd's murder, Jeremy was incarcerated, or at some point in time, he was incarcerated. He wasn't just roaming free committing murders. But this gang sports some 40 some odd members in the state of Ohio and that surrounding area. And apparently their goal is to go out and kill people. It's like Hell's Angels without motorcycles. I don't know what their story is. But I did come across that. They call themselves DOD, Dealers of Death. I flashed on them because this was Michigan, close to Ohio, and it's a small gang of guys running loose. That I think this was Todd's undoing. And basically, that's what I have to say for Todd. However, the sigil on the right is really important. I've reviewed about 10 or 12 of these charts by now, searching for some sort of correlation between all of them, some sort of, parallel between them. And I wasn't finding it. I was finding that, of course, all the victims were in very bad shape, predictably. But I was trying to find out what's the key? What is the key to all of these cases going so wrong, being so messed up, misrepresented, and lied about to the public through the media? And look at this sign. This looks like a key. It actually is the symbol for the asteroid Chiron, a very important asteroid. It's not a planet. It is like a planetoid. But I'm learning more and more about them, and they are extremely descriptive in relation to the kind of work I do with crime. This is the symbol for Chiron. It's a Greek word. The word chiropractor comes from it. And Chiron represents, in mythology, a wounded healer. His task is to heal himself through his healing powers. We all have a Chiron in our birth chart. This Chiron, however, I'm thinking, well, this is medical. So I looked back at all the charts I had reviewed for the Smiley Face group. And the only body on any of these charts with any element of regularity and pattern is this Chiron, and I believe it represents medical examiners. And Lisa already, with our fantastic research last week that we talked about, already pinned that down, that the medical examiners are all sketchy as hell. They can't be trusted. They're deceptive. And in every case, including what we're looking at right now for Todd, the medical examiner is dodgy. They're unreliable. They are hiding things. They are covering things up, and they are misrepresenting things. And so that symbol right there, Chiron, was finally the missing link that I was looking for in all these cases. And as we go forward, I'm going to keep examining it, because I bet you that I will find it in the cases that we cover in the coming weeks. And that's my discovery of the day.
BD, to your point about the frozen thing, it would make sense. There is more density in terms of fluids in the lower extremities of the body to be frozen. And there's more air cavities up here.
There's more air cavities, right.
And so it would make sense that if he was frozen, he would be upright, like an ice cube. Yeah.
And that's what I thought. So I immediately looked at, he was Saturn, and Saturn is ice, and so is Cancer is water, and put them together, it's frozen water. So that was very, I love it when it's that literal. They're not always that literal, but that one was screaming out at me, and so was the Chiron. So I'm comfortable with the path we're following with this.
That was interesting. Thank you.
That's great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Going forward, we're about to get into really start. I know, like the last episode, we went over like one case kind of, but now like we're really going to start getting into the Texas cases. And prior to that, when I started covering this, I looked into this stuff as like, how I used to with other things that I've covered. I started like looking into people who were involved in, EMS, the police force at the time. I started looking into some bars that may have came up in, certain things, and just kind of like the surrounding area. And I do think it's probably going to be going, unfortunately, about 30 or 40 minutes for me to cover all this. But I do think it really helps see maybe what's going on in Texas anyway. Regardless, in my opinion, if this has anything to do with these cases at all, I'm pretty sure something that I'm going to show is probably illegal technically, with the business aspect at least. I'm just going to be honest, there's some things that I've even mentioned to my brother because he is a cop. I've asked him about it, and he's like, I don't know if that's like really supposed to be going on, with certain people owning certain companies that are, it's just conflict of interest, maybe. So yeah, I'm going to go over that, and it should be pretty interesting. First, I'm just going to start off probably with, just wanted to show like some of the secret societies and just weird places that are in Austin, Texas. There's tons of them. Then after that, I will go into, I have a few stories of people that have been drugged and, neither robbed or kind of like drugged and woke up the next day and was like, what happened? I have some stories on that and some of the bars, and I'll cover that. And then I will be showing the police chiefs and the EMS, people that were involved or, that were working at these roles at the time of these cases. So bear with me. It's a lot, but I promise it should get interesting. First, like I said, I'll show the places. Let me fix that. Oops. Nope, that's not it. Sorry, having problems here. There we go. All right, so the first one, actually, maybe I should make it bigger so people can see it. I'm just showing. I thought it was interesting, too, how either way you went, you got an 8-minute drive. I mean, that's like really, really amazing luck for the OTO to get an 8-minute drive from there to the dam. But there is the Scarlet Woman Lodge that's out there. So we do have the OTO that's out there. We do have a Mason Lodge that is about 11-minute drive from the dam as well. And the reason I'm even using the dam is because that's kind of like where Lady Bird Lake starts, in a sense. So I'm just using that as a point. You have the Shriner Temple. That's about 21 minutes. We will mention them again later on. You also have this one. Actually, if I'll let Lisa actually kind of cover this one. I'm showed that you have an 8-minute drive also from the Austin Animal Center, and the reason I'm showing that is because something that Lisa had came across. Maybe you just want to explain real quick.
Yeah, sure. So I was looking at the businesses in and around the area that were kind of located around the river themselves, and I kind of made note or whatever, and I noticed there was a couple of animal shelters just kind of, they're called Austin Animal Alive or Alive Pets Alive or whatever. And they had different names, Austin, name predominantly on it. And then I was actually listening to one of Dana's lives, and she was talking about a presence in Texas. And just for grins, I was like, I wonder if there's best friends in Austin. And so I typed in best friends Austin, and it literally pulled up Austin Animal Center. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I looked it up, and I even went by the place and everything, and they have the logo. They're affiliated. They're part of it.
Yes. And like I even have up here, best friends that is associated with the Process Church. So if you've been listening to the Occult Rejects at all in like the last 6 months, you've seen that I've had JJ, Lisa, and Dana on multiple times talking about the Process Church. So
even if you type in best friends and Austin, it will pull up Austin Animal Center. It'll redirect to that. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then you have the Church of Scientology, which connects to Process Church. You have one of those out there as well. You have an Elks Lodge, which is 13 minutes away from the dam. You also have a Moose Lodge, 11 minutes away from the dam. You have a Knights of Columbus, which I'll mention later as well. And it is, I don't know why I did it this way, but it's also 11 minutes away from a Lions Club. So there's a Lions Club out there as well. And then, here's the Knights of Columbus from Lady Bird Lake. That's a 15-minute drive. So, the Lions Club's probably maybe like 17 to 20. Then you have the Lions Club. The Rotary Club to the Lions Club is a 7-minute drive. And then you have another Austin Founder Lions. That's on the other side, which is a little interesting. So you have all those secret societies and all. Just to me, like, got a lot of weird groups out there, and I even like, not to sound like, I guess too conspiratorial, but it's just like, all these places out there because maybe it's like convenient as well for certain things, or, is it a hot spot for certain things going on? I don't know, but it seems like there are a lot of groups out there. And I just wanted to show that. Thought it was interesting. Here, we're going to get into some of the drugged victims now. And then I'll go into some slides for some of those. And even like some cases with people getting popped in Texas for doing weird things that just seems like, in my opinion, I think there is, this idea of drugging people has been being used for a long time when you start seeing like some of the things I cover. I don't think this is something new. And that's even something I have said about the Smiley Face Killers, with them not all being under one group. I think there is just known ways of doing certain things, like, amongst the black market or amongst people committing murders, which aren't us, I would assume. So how are we in the know for all like the slick ways of doing it? There's just certain ways that probably work real well if you wanted to get rid of people. And I think just certain groups just, sometimes use the same type of style in a sense. And if there's a cultist involved, I would think that this, it's associated with water, so why not? Fits. Get into this. Man said he was drugged and he had his phone stolen, bank accounts drained after bar hopping on West 6th Street. This was published February 15th, 2022. In Austin, Texas, after a night on West 6th Street, a man said he was drugged and had his phone stolen and bank accounts drained, and he wasn't the only one. Raj said around 10 p.m. on Friday night, he went to 3 bars on West 6th Street. Raj said he got separated from his friends. This is what he says. I don't remember anything from the second bar to when I woke up at 9 a.m. He said he was groggy when he woke up, but this is where things got weird. Raj said after waking up at home, he realized a stranger's phone was in his phone case. He said he then went to the Apple store where he found out his Find My iPhone was turned off and his iCloud email was changed. After that, I saw email transactions to this random dude I never met, said Raj. It was like $2,300, and that is when I was like, oh, crap, I probably got robbed. Raj said his credit card was stolen and his debit card was drained into negative using Apple Wallet on his phone. Raj said the culprit got away with about $10,000. He said he used the random email on the Venmo transactions to find the guy on Facebook, and he said the guy had a very similar story. He woke up with somebody else's phone in his phone case. That's what Raj said. And I think, kind of just to get over the, sum it up, basically money was like stolen from him, sent to that dude, and that dude got robbed, and they like had money received to that guy so then they could steal his shit and send that to somewhere else. So like you must have had like two people.
That's some planning, and that's
two
complex.
people knocked out at the same time.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, those are the type of things I expect to see when someone's getting drugged, right? Like I expect a robbery. Like if you're drugging a victim in a bar, like these things do occur, and I do expect there to be robberies for these people, but time and time again with these SFK victims, there is no robberies, right?
Right.
So I think those are the things that do stick out the most to me. That's what you just described. That's exactly. I mean, that's a pretty complex crime, but like that's kind of the crime I expect to happen if someone's getting drugged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have this. I have it labeled as dosing drivers. How police tracked down mother-daughter suspected of robbing 4 victims in Austin. And this was October 20th. Well, this is when it was posted, 2022. And I'm going to sum this up. Arrest warrant affidavits filed in September detailed the lengthy investigations into why Sharon Jacobs and her daughter, Tamia Jacobs, are each facing charges in Austin of robbery and credit card or debt card abuse. The two are currently in the custody out of state, though. Sharon in Bay County, Florida, Tamaya in Fulton County, Georgia. Police said the first 2 victims came forward on February 12th when they reported someone stole their cell phones and bank cards and went on spending sprees in Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia. Basically, these ladies got like busted. They were they were acting as Uber drivers, and they were picking people up. And some of the people that got tested said they revealed that they had doxylamine in their system, which the police said is kind of like an antihistamine known to cause drowsiness. So, could it be something else that maybe they didn't check for? Who knows? Could have just literally been that and it worked. But
sounds like a good way to knock somebody out. Yeah, antihistamine. Yeah.
But they, knew to drug people. With drinks and shit in the car.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Whenever we went on an Uber and they were like, "Would you like some water?" "No, thank you."
Right. Good call.
And then I will get into this story, and then I'll bring up slides for it after I read it off. All right. Where is that? Sorry, I lost my.
Yeah, I mean, to your point there, Nick. If I may interject real quick. Yeah, I mean, I expect aberrations from these groups that are doing these kind of smiley face killer murders. I expect aberrations from those groups in respect to the fact that some members of those groups are going to take that same mode of operations and go do that stuff themselves in a similar manner. So that there may be people involved, I think, in these smiley face killer cells in different cities that some of those people, they may get greedy and go rob some people like you're describing in these circumstances, and they're applying some similar tactics. I would expect that stuff to happen because it's just human nature for people to kind of get greed to take over, especially people that are homicidal, egotistical, kind of lunatics.
Well, I mean, I guess if if you really think about it, I guess you want to start thinking even with like a criminal mind. It really would make sense, I guess, in areas that are known for people drinking a lot to actually drug them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it will just look like that person drank too much.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it actually I guess if you want to think like a criminal, that really does. And what I'm getting at is again, people who are in that type of mind or in that type of life, is this a known thing that in those type of areas, of course, drug victims, that's,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think that's certainly plausible. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I do wonder about that's why I think it's definitely not the same group.
Right. But they operate in the same circles? It sounds like perhaps, right?
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So let me get into this one. This one was published October 17th, 2023. Austin man says he was drugged, robbed of thousands of dollars after night out in downtown. An Austin man is fighting to get thousands of dollars reimbursed after he believes he was drugged and robbed. I was out with a group of friends in downtown Austin. We had been at a couple of bars, said Steve, who didn't want to be further identified, of course. We were in no way to the point of blackout drinking. They ended the night at Estelle's cocktail bar off 4th Street. He said one of his last memories he has is FaceTiming his cousin to let him know that he was getting into an Uber. Then I woke up the next morning in my bed, he said. Steve also woke up to a gut punch discovery. His phone, along with his credit and debit cards, were missing. Then he checked his bank statements. There were 10 to 12 different charges at 3 different Walmarts near Katy, Texas, that accumulated to about 10 grand. A series of $3 charges with 900 plus cashback withdrawals, whole bunch of stuff, 7-Eleven, ATM withdrawals. Ever since, Steve has been in communication with Austin police and many others. He says it's been exhausting. I spent over 100 hours in my personal time trying to find the right entity that's willing to have my back. So the police really, aren't giving a shit. Yeah.
Typical.
Yeah. All right, so then I'll pull up this one with Estelle's real quick before I get into the next one. So here's Estelle's, and it is on 400 Colorado Street. It's right off of West 4th. It depends. Like some of these buildings, depending on where, it could be on 2 different streets because it's by the corner. So it has this address, 400 Colorado Street, Austin, Texas. So I looked that up, and that does come up under Austin Warehouse District, and that the registered agent is David Tripoli, and it's the 400 Colorado. Address matches, and really the only people that I was just going to show real quick with this company was these 2 names, David Tripoli and Gregory Schnorr. And this is kind of just even just showing, in my opinion, some ongoing themes, which is what these people are involved in besides these companies. First off, these I don't know if I think they're brothers. You got David Tripoli and Chris Tripoli. They're also the restaurant clinic. So, in my opinion, this bar is probably nothing compared to what the regular business is. But they do have another business. And then Gregory Schnorr, if I'm saying it correctly, he has a lot of real estate development in Mexico. In my opinion, you will see a lot of real estate and property going forward, I think, when it comes to the Texas stuff. So I wanted to just, show that. And then you got these 4 right here, these other companies, Blue Concepts, Buddha Ventures, Bertrams, and then you got a whole bunch of other companies. So I don't know what the deal is here. I mean, could these all be legit companies? I couldn't really find a lot of them. Could it be shell companies? Possibly. I don't know. But definitely a lot of companies under this one guy's name in Austin, Texas, or in Texas too. So I just thought that was a little interesting, and it's stuff that, in my opinion, you'll see going forward just with other places that I bring up. So I just kind of want to show it so you see a constant repeat. Let me take this down, and then I'll get back to the next one that I wanted to read off. Another victim who had gotten drugged and robbed. He states, started Thursday night at 10 p.m. at Better Days Bar. He had 2 drinks and made his way to Las Perlas, or Perlas, if I'm saying that correctly, where he had a margarita that came out of, and he even specifies that came out of a draft. I mean, I don't know if maybe you can buy those in a can, I don't know, whatever, or it came out, I don't know.
It's probably one of those circular frozen things.
Yeah, I was thinking you must be talking about some pre-made crap, I guess.
Yeah.
It wasn't even mixed. Then he goes to the sidebar, which is a few bars down from Better Days, which I will show it is right there. He orders a whiskey and a Coke and then doesn't even remember anything. He left the bar around 1:35 and made it about 5 minutes down the block and had problems walking and talking correctly. His friend tried to take care of him. He gave him water, and he started puking like crazy. He was also sweating a lot, he said. His friend called his girl and tells his girl to come get him. He's had way too much. Eventually, the next Tuesday, he goes to the doctor because he actually says he didn't feel right after the fact, that he felt off. And he goes to the doctor and says that, and explains to them, and according to him, if this is all true or not, he said that the doctor said that you're the 4th person to come in recently saying this. But, nothing came up. They tested him and stuff, but he said he swore that, he just he said he felt like something was off, like he must have been poisoned or something. He just didn't feel right for a bit. So I figured I'd kind of get into those places. Those bars are interesting, in my opinion, much better than what I just went over. Let me bring this back up. So the Better Days. Better Days is on 714 Red River Street in Austin. At least that's what it says on here. And that is only about 10 minutes. That's a drive, though. 10-minute drive from Lady Bird Lake or Longhorn Dam. There it is. Better Days. It exists. It is there. And the sidebars.
Right next to Valhalla there, huh?
Yeah. I did find that interesting. I'm glad you said something. and then this is like literally, if you look down the block from where I think I was standing taking that screenshot, the sidebars right there. So they are right next to each other. Looking that up, you will get the Maggins LLC, Jason Kendrick and James Co, or however you say that, at that address. The Maggins, and that will have there it shows 714 Red River, Austin, Texas, and it even has a William J. Spoor. The first person I'll be showing you that's attached to this company is Jason D. Kendrick. He also has Kendrick Realty Group. Again, more realty. And, not for nothing, I do think if I start paying attention, even this United States Corporation agents at this address pops up a lot for other companies, too. I just don't think I really made a big deal out of it when I made the slides. Then you have Kendrick Ventures. Again, same guy, Texas. Kendrick Ventures, another real estate thing. So again, more real estate. Then we have the Maggins, and that's also William J. Spoor. Looked into him. He's on this 2610 Guadalupe Inc. with Rachel. And that says, 2610 Guadalupe Street is the registered agent. And when you look that up, that's the Mockingbird Saloon. So now here's like another bar in Austin, Texas that they own. I do kind of find it interesting. I mean, from an occultist aspect, calling a Mockingbird Saloon, and then you got somebody with the rabbit ears right behind it too. I find that kind of creative. It's impressive if you did that on purpose. So then I think I'll be showing Rachel and William J. after this. Under Rachel and William J. Spoor, again, they have another company called ET and GJ, according to Bizopedia, and that address matches the Grand. So that's another bar in Austin, Texas, that they own. So these people actually own a bunch of bars, in my opinion, so far. And then William J. Spoor is also on Herd Entertainment, Texas. And Herd Entertainment is kind of like a company that provides musical entertainment for a lot of these bars in this area. Where a lot of the drinking goes on. They are the ones that, like some of these bars will have outside areas where music will be played. And something you'll notice going forward, too, a lot of these bars, I don't know if it's just smart business or if it's a way of separating things. I don't know. Money laundering, who knows? But like some of these bars will have an LLC for the alcohol, the food. If there's two different types of food in there, maybe tacos, well, that's a separate LLC. That's a separate person. The other food's another separate person. The music, that's another separate LLC. So, this is like one of those situations where some of these bars will use these companies for the outside entertainment if they have the room for it. Then the sidebar comes up, where he had mentioned before. William J. Spoor is on there as well. So he owns that one too, or is involved with it. You have the sidebar, you have the Maggins, and you have Traycian LLC, all under William J. Spoor. And then when you look up Traycian, you have William J. Spoor, and I found So M. Lee. And I was like, who's that? And it seems to be, I think, his wife. And I looked up that address, and I had came to find out that they are also involved with the Travitt Heights Art Trail, which is right, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa. Isn't it kind of like over by Lady Bird Lake?
Yes, it's the neighborhood butts up to Lady Bird Lake on the south side.
And I think, I could be wrong, but I think it might actually, one of the victims might have had like a vigil, what are those things that they do?
Vigils.
Yeah, and I think it was like done on, it might have possibly been on like one of these trails, like at the end of it, or something like that. I think it ended up falling on like one of these trails. I just thought that was interesting. It was weird.
I could see that.
And then you even have Travitt Heights Art Trail on their Facebook. It even says, "Come see the beautiful work of So Lee Spoor." So she is attached to them. Las Perlas. Now let me make sure I'm not going ahead of myself here. I think that was the last story. Let me just make sure I get this correct. Sorry. Yeah. Yes, Las Perlas was another place that he went to. I'll make sure everybody knows that. And that is at 405 East 7th Street in Austin, Texas. And that is under the L&D Corp. And that is 405 East 7th Street. And you have James O'Hanlon, and Laura J. Votor. And just real quick, I'll show you them. Lauren Jean, she's passed away already, but she's known for like kind of like that area. And I think she started the first LGBTQ or lesbian bar or something like that in that area. So, I mean, that's probably was tied to her. And then you have Dan James Choop O'Hanlon. You got a he, him, and he works at Austin Community College. His LinkedIn, he has worked at Austin Community College for a while. I find it interesting. He's also worked at FEMA, and he also volunteers at the Austin chapter. He's an Austin chapter president for the Texas Gay Rodeo Association. In case anybody was wondering.
That sounds prominent.
Yeah.
In Austin, it is.
He has been
role in Austin. The
It
gay
is.
rodeo.
He has been
is,
arrested for
totally.
something too. I just can't find it. But according to Bing AI, he has been arrested in Austin, Texas. But I don't know. Now here you go. This place is also at 405 East 7th Street, and this is like the $7 grand. Like this is kind of like the alcohol. Now I guess that's also in there. And then you have this place as well. I guess part of the food, Kana. And then you also have Azador. Now that does like the tacos, and that's also at 405 East 7th Street, Austin. This is inside the same place that I was just talking about. They make the tacos. Azador is also on Rainy, 88.5. I love the 88. I mean, and then they're also at the Crackle, which is at 1700 East 6th Street in Austin, Texas. And then it's also in Las Perlas, like I was just mentioning, 405 East 7th Street in Austin, Texas. I look up Azador for over there, and you have Joseph M. Becerra. You have him for Azador, and you also have him for Rosenberg Police Officers Association. And, so he is involved in, he's trying for the Justice of Peace Precinct 4. And he is also under that Rosenberg Police Officers Association. He's on there with Alicio Flores, Christian Rivera, Sebastian Munoz. And this is Joseph Becerra. Real quick, show you the other people who they are. Kristen Rivera, she's in Rosenberg Police Department. And so is Sebastian Munoz. He's a criminal investigator. And Alicio Flores, he also has Gardens Global Company. He's also on the Rosenberg Police Officers Association. He's also on the Knights of Columbus and the Lions Den Performance Institute, LLC. Interesting combination. The Lions Den baseball and softball performances is the only thing I could find for this. It was a Facebook. That's it. I don't know. Then you had the Guardians Global Company. This is the only thing I could find for it. Was this Facebook. It says Guardians Global Company was founded by individuals serving in the capacity of law enforcement. Our company's focus is to provide financial assistance and benefits to those serving in public safety and education professions. Guardians Global Company, that has Brandon Mosley on it and Stephen Hart, as well as Alicio Flores. And Rosenberg is also an officer, and so is Stephen Hart. So these are all cops. And you have Alicio F. Flores. Again, just wanted to remind people he is also in the Knights of Columbus. So We have that. And then I will finally wrap it up here. I'm going to show the EMS chiefs that were also involved when these crimes happened, and the EMS people and the police chiefs. I'll be going into that now. You have Austin Police Chief Brian Manley retiring months after council members called for his removal. He was, one of the police chiefs at the time. And he also has in Missouri, he also has a off-duty management. So that is a company that he has. And that, surprisingly, you have CT Corporation System. People have been listening to this show for a while. You definitely have heard of CT Corporation with, like, weird things. So I find that suspect as soon as I see that. And he also has one in Idaho for off-duty management. Found that interesting. Brian Manley there again. Off-duty management is run by cops, so they understand our language, they understand our world. Built by officers for officers. Founded by law enforcement officers, designed to support and protect law enforcement. Highly regarded leadership with 200 plus years of experience in law enforcement. And there we go. You got your man right there, Brian Manley. And save time, money, and resources. I was trying to figure out what this company really does. I mean, customer service requests, account team reviews. I think they help with insurance. Officers select jobs on Officer Track mobile app. I don't know. They have something to do with even like paychecks and stuff with payroll. But then you have another one there in Virginia, and that has Brett Rowley on it with him as well, and another CT Corporation. And I wanted to see what Brett Rowley did, and he seems to be in security. He is the chairman of the board at Proto Security, co-founder and vice president, there you go, of Off-Duty Management, Proto Security. He even, Proto Security in Southfield Capital announced the strategic acquisition of off-duty services. And then we also have Chief Manley has been or spoken at the Rotary Club of Austin. So I thought that might be a little bit of interest. And I looked up the Rotary Club of Austin, and that's at 7811 Rockwood Lane. And that was the same Shriners Temple I had mentioned earlier at 7811 Rockwood Lane. So the Rotary Club, something I would like to actually mention like real quick. I know sometimes some people want to say they are not connected. The Rotary Club and the Lions Club were both started by Masons. And let's say you even want to say that they're not really connected. If the Rotary Club's inside of a shrine temple, there's a connection, something's going on there. So right here, in my opinion, you can't deny that, there's no connections between Masonry and Rotary. Because they're
totally normal.
They're using the same thing. Sorry.
Yeah, totally normal.
Yeah. And then here's Joseph Chacon, Director of Emergency Services. Show him real quick.
A retired Austin PD chief, huh?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he's been in the news a lot in Texas, so not for good things.
He has an Auto Bench Rest Association, Joseph Chacon right here. And again, the United States Corporation Agents, again, 9900 Spectrum Drive. Joseph Chacon, or however you say his name. And that's like a company that seems to make like these guns that are like, I think they stick on a bench, literally. And you shoot them from there. You don't hold them. They're like, stuck into something. He has that company. And then he's also associated with, I find this interesting because of the address, the Bourne Shooting Club. He is on that as well. And that is at 33 Shooting Club Road. It's like, wow, that's funny. And right there, the range address, 33 Shooting Club Road. He's on that. And then Brian Vincent, I just wanted to show, is also a Knights of Columbus officer. Brian Vincent is also on the Bourne Shooting Club with Joseph Chacon. So you got the Knights of Columbus hanging out with him as well. Then we got Robin Henderson. She's somebody that I think has been an interim, right? And that is like kind of like they don't have a police chief, Lisa, that they kind of just have her stepping in for the meantime.
Yeah. Yep.
Was there anything about Joseph you wanted to say real quick? Because I really wasn't getting into like his. I just wanted to show those connections.
No, he's kind of been a little of a controversial fella. He's kind of done some rulings on some cases that were not in the favor of what people were saying or whatever. But he's kind of bounced around a lot. I think once he ran into some controversy, I think he bounced to Houston, and then I think once that was going on, I think he bounced somewhere else. So it's kind of one of those things where the moment the water gets hot or boiling, he bounces. So, yeah.
Great.
That's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Robin Henderson. And one thing I just saw was interesting. She's on the Austin Police Women's Association. And I mean, I guess it's probably, maybe it's not weird, but I think it is like something that kind of deals with like raising money. Oh, yeah, she's on here with other people. Here's the building. But she does have that. Then I've looked into Art Acevedo. How do you pronounce his name, Lisa?
See, Acevedo.
Acevedo. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you have him. It shows that he's been in law enforcement. He's been on CNN. He was the chief of police department in Austin. He also heads the Scouting of Urban Youth Initiative. He is associated with the Boy Scouts of America. And this is where I start finding some weird connections with this guy. And again, just to reiterate, he was on CNN, and he was also on InfoWars. And he also has the Leadership Advantage Group. That's your leadership skills for law enforcement and the private sector. And I think they pretty much just use like... Again, like they try to give like retired or people in law enforcement jobs and stuff and leaders, whatever. And then I wanted to show the Boy Scouts because he does come up on it. He comes up on the Sam Houston Area Council Boy Scouts of America, as well as 65 other people came up under this company. I don't think I've ever seen that many people show up under one company before. So like I even had to go onto a different site because Visipedia wouldn't even show me all 66 of them. I think I was only getting like 50. I didn't do all of them. I did do a bunch. And I will say, as you'll start to see as I go forward, almost all of them were energy, property, and then you started getting a couple of judges and lawyers. And again, I just thought it was weird with like all these energy people at the Boy Scouts. I don't know. You have Jason E. Eckler. He's water resources engineering. You got Richard E. Tauber, oil company. Rich Eckler, Hart Energy, and Energy Media Advisors. So more energy. Mike Narvaez, oil and gas. He's also associated with BP, and he went to Rice Business. And this just shows right here, too, that he's associated with the Boy Scouts of America. He's been with BP. Then you have Robert Roy. I found him on here for a bunch of companies. Couldn't really find anything else on them. But, like, looking at them, petroleum. Some of them are, look like to me like there'd be some energy companies in there as well. Then we did have Rodney W. Eads from the Boy Scouts. Couldn't really find much on him except for that he has spoken at the Rotary Club. Shag Higdon, another one, financial advisory in Houston, and over 25 years of experience with the energy and financial services industry. Boy Scouts of America right there. You have Stephen D. Drake. That goes back to Strake Energy, and that also goes back to... that was George William Strake Jr. He was also, George served 2 years as a commissioned United States naval officer and received an MBA from Harvard University. Upon returning to Texas, he began his career as an independent oil operator. He honorably served as president of the Strake Foundation and has been active in politics since 1961. He served as a board member for numerous organizations, including the Rotary Club of Houston, the Sea Club, of which he was a founding member, and Boy Scouts of America. So, right there. It's interesting. And the Strake Jesuit College Preparatory. The school was founded by Father Michael Kennelly on June 21st, 1960, in what was then the undeveloped west side of Houston. It is named in honor of oil tycoon George William Strake Sr. That's nice. Stephen Oldham, petroleum, Seahawk drilling. You got the Boy Scouts. So I found on him more energy. And then you have Stephen P. Mock. He's on Houston Symphony Society and a whole bunch of other places. And he is involved with the Texas Racing Commission and other energy places. I'm not going to read that whole thing, but Victor Burke, Plains All-American Pipeline. That is energy. You have Ellie Simons, Sinclair Oil Corporation, the energy place, rice business. John B. Walker and Judd Walker. Together they have they're involved in Chesapeake Energy. Sorry, I couldn't read that. It was a little too small. Jean-Francois Papeau, another dude, more energy. Frank Tesoro, Indigo Natural Resources. Dan Cherie, more energy partners, EV Energy Partners. And I think he had one in Saudi Arabia as well, where he's involved with that company. Clay C. Williams, oil industry. He also went to Princeton and the University of Texas at Austin. Charles Davidson, Quantum Energy Partners. And then you have, we got a district judge here, David Hittner. Judge Wesley Ward. He's on a couple other things too. Ashley's Life Foundation. A couple other things I just, you're really supposed to be doing that. This guy, he is an attorney from Norton Rose. Bill Claudel, another Norton Rose attorney. Stuart W. Gagnon, another Norton Rose. Kevin W. Yakowski, Norton Rose Fulbright. Then the EMS, real quick, not much on this. You have Mark E. Escott. He's been in the EMS for a while. And he does have Archangel Enterprises, which I found that kind of interesting. Archangel Enterprises, it's custom websites, custom business web and mobile app creations. This, Archangel. Who knows? Could be nothing. But here, there he is, Mark E. Escott. And he's also in, I had mentioned before in the chat, because people were actually bringing up, I don't know what got to it, motorcycle groups being kind of like secret societies. And like I mentioned in the chat, that I think there's the Kukulkan, and that's like a motorcycle group for the Order of Quetzalcoatl, which is an inner order of the Shriners. So I do know, they do have motorcycle groups too. And he is also associated with this motorcycle group, the New Alliance. The Alliance International Advisory Board is pleased to announce the induction of the Legion of St. Michael, LEMC, as an Alliance member club. The Legion of St. Michael is a law enforcement-based motorcycle club founded in 2014. So there's a little motorcycle club. And then James Koch, he had something, Cold Firm Foundation. That one has something to do with adopting kids. So that is the end of my rabbit holes. Just wanted to show what kind of people and what kind of things are going on in areas of drinking and in law enforcement and EMS.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, E. Scott, he was kind of instrumental in the whole COVID thing with Austin and saying when, what, and can the festivals go, can festivals not, don't do this, don't do that. So there's all that whole money thing with, attraction or not, or siphoning people more to the hospitals or not. And then Chacon, obviously, the controversies with him, more money, defund, all that other stuff. So, yeah, for sure. I am going to, I guess, bring up our first one that we were going to cover. And I was going to do Cole Christensen. So Cole Christensen, his event occurred in 2012. And this is right after, and I believe you caught episode 1, I talked about Riyad Hamad. And he was, so Riyad Hamad was in 2008. And then you don't really see much, maybe an unidentified body here and there, but not anything definitive. But you see this event with Cole Christensen happen in 2012. And so Cole Christensen, just to kind of give you a brief rundown on him, he's from Anchorage, Alaska. He previously attended University of Alaska in Anchorage. He was in Austin specifically for the weekend of the Austin City Limits Music Festival. And I attached the little lineup of who was playing that weekend. And he was actually very proficient in water sports. I think, his obituaries, they indicate how he enjoyed spending time at Big Lake with family and friends, and that he was very active in wakeboarding, jet skiing, hockey, and snow skiing, and all that other stuff. But that anything that was water, he excelled in it. So just to kind of reemphasize, he was proficient in water. He wasn't, so like I said, he was in Austin to attend the Austin City Music Festival. And the thing that happened was that he apparently was claimed that he walked off and potentially fell into the river. Cole's body was found in the morning at 11:10 a.m. by an employee at the Austin Music City Hall. The body was said to be lying in Shoal Creek behind the music hall at 2008 Nueces Street. Now, what's interesting about the Austin City Music Hall is that is no longer there. It was built in 1995, but it was demolished in 2016. Now, granted, this is 2012 when they find Cole. The owners of the entertainment company filed for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2013, which is the year after Cole is found behind them in the creek. So it's the Austin Music City Hall. Behind it is the creek, and they saw Cole in the creek itself, inside on the creek. News media reports that the day that Cole was found, it was immediately ruled a not suspicious death by APD, and that the department was not going to conduct any further investigation. So that's pretty much the case closed, shut, and that pretty much seals it for Cole. Now, I looked into who was the actual ME on staff during this time. Now, I'm going to kind of pull you back into history a little bit. And we talked about last episode about Hamad and how his body was found, and he had duct tape all over him, and it was ruled an actual suicide. So what's interesting about that case is that the ME that was at Travis County at that specific time was Dr. Robert Bayardo, and he had been there since 1979, and his tenure extends all the way into 2006. What's interesting about him is that he has been implicated in so many litigations for not only falsifying so many autopsy reports, but also that he was performing autopsies for other people, kind of like in a contractual way. In so much that when he, I guess, resigned, he had supplemented his county's salary by $2.6 million just by doing out-of-county autopsies. So I believe the National Autopsy Board recommends that you only do roughly around like 350 autopsies. By the time he was done, he had conducted over 55,000 autopsies. So who's to say how many autopsies he was doing correctly or not correctly? But I will say that there was 3 cases that stand out with this one. And that there was a guy, a 23-year-old, that was trying to fake his death. He dug up an 81-year-old woman that had been buried, burned her, and then tried to pass it off as himself. And Bayardo said that no, it was a male that had a penis, and there was urine in the bladder and so forth, which could not have been the case at all. But that was one of the cases where he ruled it incorrectly. Another case was where he had falsified that a child that had died was because of the result of abuse, which wasn't the case either. There are several people sitting on death row currently because of Bayardo's rulings that were incorrect, and that there is sufficient evidence to show that it was incorrect, and yet those trials are still in litigation, trying to get resolved and so forth. I think he was also involved in the cremation of the wrong body. So this was the first ME that Travis County ever had. And when all this happened and he resigned in 2006, we bring in David Doelink. And so he starts in 2006, sets the precedence because there's all this controversy. He has to come in and clean house. And David Doelink is there from 2006 to 2014. So this spans into Riyadh and Cole Christensen. What's interesting about this guy, he was pretty, it seems on the surface, he's pretty clean. You know, he's in there kind of, you know, trying to reverse all of the controversy that has come to Travis County Medical Office. But he comes from Cleveland, Ohio. And when he submits his letter of resignation in 2014, he returns back to Cleveland, Ohio. And he is now currently the ME there. Now, I don't know what that all connects with Ohio, but I think it just seems like one of those things where it's like interesting that it's Ohio in and of itself. He has numerous publications. He's published several books. One in particular thing that I found to stand out was that he has several publications and a couple of books with another medical examiner named Evan Matches. Matches is involved in litigation with another ME that was in Travis County for illegally transporting organs to one of their LLC companies in San Diego, California. I think that case has been dismissed, and I think they're trying to go back in. But he is also wanted for falsifying autopsy reports and saying that, you know, there was a spleen weight of something. When the family comes back and looks at the autopsy, they're like, no, he had a spleen removed. So there's so many discrepancies with this, and this is all happening in Travis County. So the other thing with the ME for Cole is that at this point, 10 bodies have been recovered. At this point after Cole, 10 bodies have been recovered or pulled from Ladyburg Lake. Of these, 5 have been identified, and then 5 have remained unidentified. So with Cole, it kind of is at a standstill. Nothing's really been determined or resolved, just accidental drowning, case closed. After Cole, we have these 10 bodies that have been pulled. I'm going to quickly run through them. And what ends up happening is that all of them are consistently being stated as accidental drownings. It isn't until we have Martin Gutierrez in 2018 that the families actually push back, that they actually start to question the ruling. But nothing up until that point, there was any pushback. So I kind of fast forward us into Martin Gutierrez, because that's the moment when families are starting to question, the public is starting to question, everybody's starting to question this whole ruling of accidental drowning. Now, it can, I mean, I guess you can argue that it wasn't until Martin Gutierrez that all this happened because there was so much of an accumulation. But I think what ended up happening is that everything is being assumed alcohol-related drownings. And so that's kind of why I wanted to focus back onto Martin Gutierrez. Just really quickly with him. So he's from Big Spring, Texas. He went to Texas Tech University, which is in Lubbock, Texas. And remember that one. He graduated in December 2017 from Lubbock, Texas Tech. And then he moves to Austin in 2018. He's living in Austin for 11 months before this incident happens. So Martin Gutierrez himself is employed at One Main Financial in Austin. What I found interesting about that bank is that there's a branch in Big Spring where he's from. There's a branch in Lubbock. There's 3 branches in Austin. There's a few branches in Corpus Christi, which now we're seeing that there's a few cases pop up. And there's several branches in Albuquerque. You're like, why Albuquerque? And I'll mention here in a little bit. So he goes missing on Sunday, November 19th. And he is last seen at 1 a.m. on the 9th block of Rainey Street. He had a drink at Lester Pearl. From there, he went to the bar called Alibi, which was right next door to Lester Pearl. And he's refused a drink by the staff because he seems intoxicated and he's acting completely strange. The manager of Alibi said that that there was nothing really suspicious on the surveillance videos, but that he did see Martin kind of like hanging on to his friends and kind of acting weird. And then about 1:15 in the morning, he starts running south down the street itself. The family members, that when they finally got a hold of the tape and they were able to see what was happening on the surveillance video, which that was another thing. It took a while for them to access or get a hold of the business surveillance video. They said that was completely not normal for Martin to be acting that way. He was kind of like jogging out of the bar in a funny way, which was completely unlike him. He was, they said that while he was in the bar, that he was constantly looking at his phone and looking at his hands for extended periods of time, which to me indicates some sort of drugging or so. Martin was last seen wearing a black Patagonia jacket, light green shirt, dark blue jeans, gray Vans, according to police. He is later found on Monday, November 26, 2018. And that's 4 days after Thanksgiving, I believe. And he's found around Ladybird Lake, the 1300 block of Riverside Drive. And on here, I forgot to mention that the kind of marked where they disappeared from and then where they were found. Surprise, surprise, his death is ruled an accidental drowning. There is bruising to the lower part of his head as listed as blunt force trauma to the head. There's no skull fracture or brain injuries, also found swelling of the head and chest cavities. He had ID and credit cards on him, which again, JJ was mentioning how they're usually not robbed. Most of these SFK killings. He was a proficient swimmer, just like Cole, and he had no history of seizure disorder or histories of illicit prescription drug use. But the ME's office reported that they just found alcohol in his blood and no prescription drugs. So why do I bring this up? Well, because it leads us into another medical examiner that apparently Sam Andrews, as well as Evan Matches, which I just mentioned, all went to school together in University of Calvary. And then they also did a stint together in Albuquerque, where they were both professors. The new ME that's currently there and that started there in 2015, so this is before Martin's event happens, is Keith Pinkard. Keith Pinkard is the one that picked Sam Andrews to work under him. And remember, Evan wrote a book with the previous ME, David Doling. So they all know each other. They're all either writing papers with each other, they're all consulting with each other, and that's not unheard of. However, when you start to hear that both Evan Matches and Sam Andrews are in litigation because they illegally transported organs, all of a sudden everything else comes into question. So, and they also came from the New Mexico office as well. So Keith Pinkard was also there in New Mexico. To say all that was basically that I think that there is an element of collaboration, especially with some of these scientific journals, especially with Pinkard, when you see that there are journals being published under the topic of removal of certain organs does not invalidate an autopsy or does not affect an autopsy or does not, pollute the actual findings of the autopsy, that you can remove organs and it would be just fine. It just seems a little bit bad. So that's pretty much what I have for these two. And then also the MEs.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing I think I did forget to mention real quick, and I won't drag it out for too long. Let me just remove that. I think I forgot to mention something about Todd Geib before. I think I kind of skipped over him. The one thing I did want to mention that I think the police chief that they had at the time did leave because of some scandal thing. But their police department has also gone into one Rotary Club and showed them something about their new drones, and some other Rotary Club for something else. So they've gone to, even that police department is involved with the Rotary Club. And the reason why I want to bring them up again, just to reiterate something that I mentioned with, I think in the first episode, they have boats. You know, I do want to stress that they actually have boats because they're by places of water. You know, and like I said, Gilgo Beach gets sanded. Their sand is done by the Rotary Club. You know?
Yes.
So, It's interesting.
And it wouldn't be out of the norm to see somebody out there, because there's, rowing teams that practice, there's Rotary clubs that practice, there's all kinds of things out there. And if they dump a body, who's going to know? Because everybody's out on the water. So I could see that.
Yeah. And it seems, based on these examples you showed here tonight, Nick, it seems that a lot of the power structures of some of these areas, the political power and the power amongst the commercial interests of the town, seem to kind of flow through these Rotary clubs and Knights of Columbus, as you showed with the law enforcement in Texas.
Oh, and the other thing is that majority of and they were been in trouble with families, because a majority of these medical examiners will side with law enforcement. And so that kind of invalidates their objectiveness, so to speak. And then the other one is that the administrative officer for Travis County Medical Office, she's no longer there. She's been passed, but she got her start in New York City. As a matter of fact, she helped with the 9/11 incident and was there processing bodies as they were coming into the office. There's like a story of her like seeing what happened, and she rode her bike across the bridge from Brooklyn into the actual city to help or what have you. But she's an actual lawyer that she now, and then just moved to Austin and then was part of all that. And through her, they implemented a fee that if you wanted the body cremated, or if they ruled that the body was going to be cremated, the actual office would charge the county for taxpayer dollars to process cremations, which they were making bank. So I think it was like, I don't know, 78,000 additional money they were making per year. And then it keeps going up every year.
They've turned that into a lucrative enterprise, it sounds like, down there at the medical examiner's office.
So much that they got a brand new facility, a $27 million facility.
Wow.
And they service 48 counties. That's another one. Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, well, I'm going to move on. I guess BD will go on to your chart. Or do we have a chart? Yes, right?
Cole.
Yes,
there you go. There's Cole.
Yeah, let me bring it up. Let me make it bigger. Here we go.
All right. Yeah, with Cole, I'm beginning to sound like a broken record. This was not accidental. This was a murder. There was violence done to this young man. And something so strange about the way it was done. He was completely under the control of the perpetrator, perpetrators. I believe there's more than one individual that somehow took him over. I believe he was unconscious, rendered unconscious. So much so it shows total impairment and control by another individual. And again, looking at evidence that has not thus far been disclosed, there would be something revealed as to the manner of his death, something hidden rather, regarding his throat, possible suffocation, strangulation. That's showing as evidence that has not been disclosed. And again, you have the signature that I have found of a sketchy medical examiner and evidence not being disclosed. Also, there's a possibility that somebody befriended him, but then completely took him over, either by drugs. He was drugged. I believe he was unconscious for much of what happened to him. And I also sensed something to do with money, a money motive. I don't know if something was taken from his body, such as organs, this money in relation to this crime. And just the fact that he was completely taken over by somebody, and just, I know he didn't disappear, but he was just not conscious. I believe maybe he was overdosed or suffocated. Just really, really strong indications of just not being present at all. Once he was taken by this person, that was the end of it. He was unconscious, he OD'd or suffocated. And so it's starting to look, just like the rest of them, where other people are involved and there's an intent to commit murder, and then it's covered up. Like I said, starting to sound like a broken record.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thank you very much, PJ.
Sure.
I will say one more thing in terms of the medical examiners. There's no requirement for medical examiners in Texas to be trained in forensic science or pass a specialty exam. All they have to do is basically be fresh out of medical school, no training or experience in forensics, and you can basically become hired as one in certain counties. And I believe with this next one that we talk about, you can actually be elected into or appointed into a medical examiner position. So, and you have very little oversight as well.
Wow.
It's true.
Now, is the next case I guess we're going into is JJ's? Is that Joey Labute?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Before we move forward, though, I do want to just mention real quick that hopefully, if all things work out, we are trying to speak to one of the families, a family member of one of the victims that we were going to cover this coming week, and even talk to somebody who has been talking to family members of like drowning victims in Austin, Texas, and actually is like going to be involved in some sort of Netflix show on drowning victims across the country. And they've spoken to some of the family members of these cases that we're covering. And, so hopefully by then we might actually have some stuff that like, hopefully that we can repeat, saying that, that this has been said, by the family members and blah, blah, blah. Because, one of them that we have spoken to definitely thinks there was something to do with occultism with her brother dying, unfortunately.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
Yeah. So, So it should, hopefully, might be some interesting stuff. But I just want to let people know that, in the next coming one, hopefully you might actually have some like stuff straight from some of these family members' mouths. Might help a little bit with the case or trying to understand what really maybe went on. All right, so JJ, last one for the show.
Yeah, sure. Joey Labute. This is kind of the case that caused me to start being vocal about these smiley face killer victims. It's a Cincinnati native who died in 2016 in Columbus, Ohio. Last seen March 5th, 2016, at a popular nightclub and bar district there in Columbus. He was a homosexual man, and I believe it was a gay bar, which this around 2016, it seemed to be an upward trend in the SFK victims. The trend started becoming more homosexual victims as opposed to more of the, straight victims. It seemed like 2016 was kind of the turning point. There's a lot of correlations between Labutes and other victims after him, like Dakota James would be another good example out of Pittsburgh, where Labute and James were both, presumably, according to the parties they were with that evening, using gay dating apps, which I think is been also something that was an upward trend around 2016 as far as stalking some of these victims and selecting some of these victims through not just gay dating apps, but dating apps in general, but specifically gay dating apps relative to victims like Joey Labute. He was out with family and friends at a bar, just hanging out, and fairly routine activity for him. He'd been living in Columbus for a number of years and drove to the bar that evening. His car was still in the same spot he parked it after he disappeared. So folks were really concerned immediately as a result of that fact alone, that he was seen leaving the bar by his friends and family, his cousin and other folks that he went to the bar with. And then his car is still there, when they're looking for him the next day. So obviously folks knew there was something wrong. He's not seen for another 24 days. His body's discovered March 29th, 2016 in the Scioto River there in Columbus, Ohio. Not too far from where he was disappeared from, just upstream a little bit, in fact. And this actually was one of the first cases that law enforcement immediately tried to be honest. I at least give them credit for that, because they immediately ruled it undetermined death. They ruled it a homicide with an undetermined cause of death, but they ruled it a homicide. So it's still an open homicide case today. No one's, to my knowledge, no one's actively investigating it within the Columbus PD. Sure, it's assigned to an officer. However, it's still an open and ongoing case. And once again, Labute's, as soon as when his body was discovered, the local authorities, the medical examiner's office, and law enforcement there in Franklin County, Ohio, they determined that he obviously wasn't in the water for 24 days based upon decomposition. He obviously didn't drown because his lungs were dry. So there was immediate concerns regarding the circumstances surrounding his disappearance and death, that they were at least honest about it and immediately declared it a homicide. So once again, there's probably political intervention since then that has caused that not to be investigated. However, yeah, definitely that this case specifically seemed to be a turning point in some of these SFK victims for a number of different, for a variety of different reasons, like I covered, from the way they were being stalked through gay dating apps, through the fact that the victimology seemed to turn more towards the homosexual community. And again, it may be a matter of convenience. There could be a couple different factors of what caused that change, but nonetheless, this was around that time. And this was also, again, the case that caused me to quit watching these cases for 8 years by that point and start being more vocal about the issues. Because again, this was all over the media in Cincinnati, where I was living at the time. And it's kind of unavoidable, over that, especially over that 24-day period where he was missing. It was definitely like Joey Labute tracker in the news, like, no new news today on the whereabouts of the missing man, kind of deal. So, this is a very unique case, I think, in those respects. Again, there's very few law enforcement agencies that have declared any of these cases homicides, let alone done that without any pushback and willingly, seemingly willfully doing that from day one, which again is what occurred here. So I think that's an interesting dynamic.
If I may add something real quick with the
sure.
So the ME that was the one that did the autopsy was Anaí Ortiz from Franklin County. And it's interesting because there's not really a whole lot about her, just that there's an investigation that she has spent millions of county tax dollars to contract with private firms and outside agencies, particularly Montgomery County Coroner's Office, but another one, a Las Vegas-based Forensic Pathology Services, LLC. And remember, on the last episode, we had Lindsay Thomas that was also affiliated with a Las Vegas situation. She's the one with the whole, George Floyd type thing. But one thing that I thought stuck out was that within a year, she had lost 4 to 5 of her pathologists within a few months. And a lot of it was cited that they went to go work for private firms. And I think with this whole case, especially with this office, you're starting to see the trend of these LLCs developing, or these private firms of forensic pathologists developing, to where you're now going to have those available because of the amount of money that is generated and made off of these companies for secondary, tertiary, whatever, outside autopsies or samples wanting to be made.
Sure.
So I thought that was interesting just to note real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's quite a revenue stream being generated here through all these medical examiner private corporations.
Yes.
All right. I'll, I guess, BD, I'll bring up your chart if you want for this.
Okay. Right.
Here we go. Joey Labute last text and Joey Labute last scene.
Yeah, I was really happy to be able to get timestamps for both when he's last seen, and then he does not return to his car. I believe what happened was he was approached by some individuals, and who may have said, "Gee, Joey, you're really too drunk to drive. We'll take you." And of course, they never bring him home. He's overcome and dumped in a field. I believe the manner of death was some sort of crushing of suffocation. There's nothing to do with water in his lungs. They don't find external injuries, but that doesn't mean you can't be suffocated. As with the first guy that we did last week, I had said I thought that I think it was Jared, that he was suffocated in mud. And that's the case with Joey. And he's found in a field which is consistent with some of the asteroids surrounding him, to do with a field, a meadow, where his body's located. The weird thing about this is that once he is put in the car and driven away by these individuals, he sends a couple of texts. One, somebody texts him and said, "Joey, where did you go?" Because he had left the party he was at. And all he texted back, "driving," although he wasn't driving, he was being driven. But something was upsetting him, and he was also possibly already overcome by some drug or intoxication, because the next text he sends made no sense. He texted the letters JNHSTIOJ, and his friends set to work and tried to figure out what on earth was he trying to text. Maybe he's in the car, he was being jostled, he was passing out, he wasn't capable of texting properly. They figured there was, I believe, a park or a nearby location by the name of Johnston's or Johnson's. And that's what they think he was trying to communicate to them. But he was just taken away by people that convinced him. I don't know if it was sexual in nature. I did suspect that for some of the other cases because there was certain signs of it, like, for example, Jared, he was attractive. Somebody was attracted to him at the bar he was at. And I thought, well, that was a possible sexual, interest. In the case of Joey, I just think he was brought away and killed in a field and then placed in water. And I don't really get the motive. I don't see anything really personal about it. But it was individuals that had that intent in mind. And the minute he left the party, he was in imminent danger. And once again, on the right, I have a red star for the sketchy medical examiner, not revealing all the evidence. And on the left, I have what we call a grand cross in red, 2 lines crossing each other at 90-degree angles. And that's pretty serious crisis. It's a karmic indicator in the birth chart. In an event or crime chart, that's like a serious commission of a felony or a murder. And the person had no chance of getting away from it. Also, the position of the moon later on that month, or I'm sorry, just prior to that, there was a blood moon, which is also called the harvest moon. And so I was trying to link up moons, eclipses, phases of moons. I didn't succeed, but that's when I did come up with the connection to Chiron and the medical examiners. But I was intrigued by this text that made no sense. So I ran the gematria, English and simple gematria, and it connects strongly to Neuralink, which is interesting. We get blood moon, red October. We get masonry. Who is Austin? Hidden message within a hidden message. And the great Anunnaki event for that cryptic whatever he's trying to send, which his friends thought it was related to, I think it was Johnston Park, someplace only a few miles away from where this party was. And to this day, they haven't really cracked the code of it. But it was definitely a question of, once again, a kidnapping, abduction, being carried away. And the poor guy was so impaired, he was unable to text anybody what was happening. He didn't even know what was happening. And so, unfortunately, that's the story of Joey. And he was severely intoxicated. I could see that from the other positions of what I've marked out here. And that he was carried off. And no water in the lungs, no external injuries, but he was suffocated, maybe by somebody actually just crushing his chest or his throat. And it didn't leave a mark, or it left a mark and they didn't tell us that. Who the heck knows with these medical examiners, what's being included and what's being left out. But it's definitely a murder with intent for Joey.
Thank you.
No, that's great stuff, BD. Yeah, and if I may just add a couple notes there on the back end. Yeah, I think that's a good analysis. The law enforcement there has been really close to the chest as far as the facts go. So he very well could have had some physical assault, evidence of physical assault.
Right.
I think that's very plausible and very likely in this situation. And I think it's relative to the the intoxication and the drugging. Yeah, he definitely had been doing some drinking, but he exhibited signs, apparently, according to his friends and family, that were in excess of, being more drunk in appearance in excess of what he'd actually drank. So, relative to this concept of drugging these young men with GHB, that there was a lot of GHB rolling around Columbus, Ohio that weekend, between the bar scene that I know for a fact GHB's president are in that kind of bar scene already in Columbus, just from going to bars in that area over the years and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And also the Arnold Classic was in town, which was the largest bodybuilding competition. Oh, yeah. So all those bodybuilders, 22,000 bodybuilders basically come to town, and those guys love and women love GHB as part of a supplement.
Love the drugs, yeah,
to get their muscles to recover quicker.
Well, what was most interesting was the reason I did the two charts to see the progression of time, like when he was last seen and then his last text, and it all went sideways toward evil intent. Mm-hmm. The thing was, when his first text was driving, he wasn't driving, but he was still capable of saying that he was in a car in motion. Sure. But by the second text, JNHSTIOJ, what? He was losing connection with consciousness. I mean, he was so scrambled by then he couldn't even text where he thought he was going, which means to me they must have said, we're going to drive you over to Johnston or whatever the place really was. And he was trying to communicate that to his friends by text, but he couldn't even type it. So he goes from being able at least to say driving, although that's not correct. He was riding in a car, but it's close enough. But he goes from driving to not even being able to spell the word out. So he was whacked out on something for sure. And it was probably very easy to subdue him, in which case, the rest was done without any resistance.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I had one thing to add. I meant to say about Todd. I saw online that there's a change.org petition started to reopen his case, and they only needed a few hundred more names. And so I just want to let people know, if you want to go to change.org and sign the petition to continue investigating Todd's case, Todd Geib, please do so, because they only needed a few more people.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Go do that.
That's a great suggestion.
Really
literally, if everybody listens to this show, sign that, it'd be over. So, I mean, that's something. Think about that.
That's true.
Think about that. So, I would highly suggest to go do that.
Right.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of happened to me last episode. I think StreamYard got tired of all my slides and won't let me pull up anymore. There's a couple of things I had for Joey
Denied.
Yeah, I was like, yo, dude, you burnt this out. Come on. Like, nobody wants this anymore.
Death by PowerPoint.
I guess just kind of going with some of the themes with, like, looking up, like, Masonic stuff or, like, the Rotary Club and the Lions Club. When it does come to Joey Labute, the Union Cafe is, like, probably maybe like 12 blocks away from the Rotary Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right by the state capitol, too.
And there's, like, I think maybe within, like, a 14 or 15-minute drive, there is also, like, a Lions Club, and I think 2 Mason halls. So, I mean, it just was, like, kind of usual things I've noticed around these crimes. So I just included that. Another thing I thought was kind of interesting with one of the EMS people that was there during the time of Joey Labute. His name was Robert Lowe, and he was like a he was a medical director, Columbus, Ohio, Division of Fire, clinical professor of emergency medicine. He was also in Ohio University, and at one point he was also a medical director in North Texas and Northern Colorado and Central Ohio. So I just was like, well. I mean, that really could literally be nothing and just coincidence, but I was just like, that's interesting. I mean, we're talking about the same areas.
Because Duolink, the medical examiner, was out in Dallas as well before he went to Ohio and then back to Austin and then back to Ohio. So it's interesting.
And I won't bore you with it, but like the person who owns the Union Cafe and other people that he's associated with. I mean, they owe tons of company. I mean, they even have a brewing company. So, but they, I'm sure they could easily like cover things up with. I don't know. They are very involved, kind of like what I was showing with those places in Texas. That guy is huge in like the entertainment and drinking area, especially in the gay scene. Huge.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like the interconnected nature of these bars, with it being all these different bar owners on other bars' boards and entertainment company boards, it seems like that is impetus enough to never let any of this information out, because it's going to ruin their business, right?
I mean, there's even like an art gallery type thing too associated with them. Whole bunch of weird stuff. But and then I would even say honestly, I would think some of the companies that was under one dude's name. I can't remember. I'm not gonna look it up now. But like, he had a crap ton of companies that like I couldn't even find. So you start like having to wonder, are these even real?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, if you look at these Emmys, you see that they're bought and paid for, or they have the propensity or the ability to be bought and paid for. And so if you want to run a crime syndicate with these bars, with these PD, with whomever, it's ripe for the taking.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, good point, Lisa. I really think the medical examiner is an important factor in determining whether or not you can commit an SFK style, murder in a town, is whether or not the medical examiner is controlled.
Yeah, sure. Case closed. Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy's name, just real quick, is Rajesh Lahoti. That's the guy who kind of like owns like tons and tons of stuff down in that area.
It's a good old fashioned American name.
Yeah. Oh no, he's not.
Just being facetious. Yeah. Well, that's what I've noticed. So like, there's a Chinese ME over in the Dakota James case. I think the ME in the Riley Strain case is Indian, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of non-Americans being involved in a lot of these ME offices as well.
One thing I do want to, I just love bringing it up. I think it's because of the lady's name. But again, like I even want to like mention, even with the Idaho 4, that's a weird case. And that lady, Kathy Mabutt, she's in the Lions Club, and she had like, I mean, like you listen to some of the stuff that this lady even says on the interview. It's just like, like, I don't know. It was just kind of like pointless to even hear her talk.
She doesn't sound like a coroner, right? Like she's not a medical examiner.
Yeah, it could have been
coroner.
Scratches.
She doesn't even sound like it, right? Like,
yeah, maybe it was cuts.
Yeah.
Like it looks like she actually kind of was like, I don't know what to tell you. Not probably because she wasn't allowed. It just seemed her I don't know, her interviews just seemed weird.
They did know they're super creepy, yeah. I mean, and according to all facts that are known as of today, they were completely lies. Like her interview were lies. Like she's saying like the time of death is wrong, the manner of death is being described in a way that is apparently not does not comport with the facts of where some of the victims were laying, how they were found. So a lot of her interviews are very strange in that case.
Yeah, it is actually.
It's a good way, but it's a good example of how you can control an entire situation with controlling the coroner's office or the medical examiner's office.
I mean, I would even think, as silly as this sounds, like, BD was talking about like strangulations. I mean, if you kind of like are involved with the body, unfortunately, after the fact, I mean, with just some makeup, you can probably cover up a strangulation. I mean, who's going to really, when you're going to show the body of a dead person and say this is how it happens, I mean, is somebody else really going to sit there and stare at it like that long?
You may not even need to do that, because in the case of Dakota James, he had a clear evidence of some sort of ligature marks on his neck and on his hands from trying to remove the ligature from his neck while somebody was clearly choking him to death. And the ME's office didn't even write it down. They didn't put it in the report. It's in the photographs, right? But it just wasn't in the written report. They're just like, that's not important. So, yeah, they didn't have to go as far as to put on makeup or hide it,
Really want to go down like a weird rabbit hole with this. Like, it's just, total conspiratorial wild idea here. But me and Lisa and Teresa have even shown like something weird with Masonic halls next to funeral homes.
I know.
So now if you are tied to that, odds are you probably got the makeup not too far away from the lodge to make them look nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Very weird.
Really, yeah, exactly. Who knows?
Yeah. They're all like I think we covered over like 100 lodges that were probably like walking distance, if not like you could throw a rock at it. I was like, yo, what's up with these funeral homes?
Right.
Yeah, very weird. Thank you all for coming on. That was really great. I had a really good time. That went, even better than I expected, like the last one. Thank you, everybody in the chat. That's what's up. There was a lot of great stuff being said in there. Unfortunately, in this type of show, I was really needing to pay attention, so I really couldn't mind the chat as much. I'm sorry. I think I kind of mentioned that in the first one. And when we do part 3, and if there's a 4 needed, probably be the same situation, unfortunately. But I need to kind of pay attention with this stuff. But I do appreciate everything I was able to see and kind of read when I had the chance. That's why I go live. I appreciate it. Real quick, I will let these amazing co-hosts, I guess drop wherever you can find them. JJ, we'll start with you.
Appreciate the conversation again. Nick, Lisa, great. Thanks for the invite. BD, great analysis. I enjoyed, once again, I'm enjoying your forensic astrology there. Great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to the next part. Folks of the interwebs, again, JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD. I'm sure Nick will have my link tree in the notes. Although I was just thinking the other day, I may as well also put host of Operation GCD / Occult Reject, because I've done this. I've looking at the number of podcasts I've done on my own show recently. I've done a lot more over here, I feel like. So nonetheless, great conversation, and definitely look forward to the next part.
Yo, I shit you not, and not to sound weird, no homo or nothing, but today I was out doing something, and I was thinking about the show, and I was like, I wonder if JJ's even had time to do his own podcast with the amount of shows I've asked this kid to come on with. And I was I really need to pump the brakes. I started thinking damn, I hope I'm not screwing this guy up.
No, not at all. I enjoyed the conversation, right. So for
it's
sure.
It's funny how I literally was thinking something about that today. Yo, I love it though. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on, man. You really
awesome. Yeah, for sure. I appreciate the invite.
And BD, let everybody know what's up with you.
Well, Nick, thanks for having me on again. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram. My website is strangebutTrueCrime.com. Anything else you want to know about me is probably in the links below.
Awesome. You want to, I know you have sent me an email or a couple of messages of ideas that you've had for shows that I know we're going to definitely do. You want to maybe tease the people with 1 or 2 ideas that you have already have ideas for the show?
Yeah, actually, I've done some spoilers already. Talking about the asteroids, we're going to do a show about the asteroids in Greek mythology, how they relate to what I see when I'm doing my work with the astrology charts. They're extremely revealing, tell a story all their own, and it's all based on mythology, which is fascinating because we connect to that in levels we don't even understand yet. And then we're going to do, I think we're going to do sacred geometry in astrology, because that's a lot of number stuff and fun. That kind of relationship. I was just looking at the list this afternoon. It escapes me right now.
Oh, it's okay. That's good enough.
We're going to do a mass shooting in, of all places. A viewer asked us to cover the Port Arthur mass shooting, which was in Tasmania in 1996. That's an important one because it changed the gun laws in the whole country of Australia. And it was a very dodgy, lone gunman, psycho person that all of it was blamed on. And it was just, I know the story because I listened to podcasts about Australian true crime. So I'm familiar with it, and it just doesn't add up at all. So she asked, would I cover it with you guys? And I pitched it to you, Nick, and we decided it would probably be a good idea. John Benet Ramsey's coming up. That should be really interesting. Because I did her years ago. She actually is in one of my books. I used her her charts as an example. So we have that going on, and I don't remember the rest, but there's a list somewhere in your inbox, Nick.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
At some point in time, we'll
got a lot of good stuff
it.
on there for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely keep us busy for a bit with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Yeah, there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yeah. You already mentioned the shows. All right. Oh, and Edgar Casey. That is another one that I am looking forward to that one, yes.
Of course, Edgar Casey. How could I leave out Edgar Casey? He's the reason I'm here right now, pretty much. Right? Is Edgar Casey the reason we're here right now?
That's funny.
I think it was mom and dad.
Oh, it's
The
mom.
mom. Yeah. That's, she might get you
I was talking to my sister. My sister was a staff editor for the Edgar Casey Foundation Press, and she read
nice.
all the manuscripts of all the publications of people that researched the Edgar Casey readings in Virginia Beach, where I lived for 8-9 months. And Cheryl, my sister, lived there for a longer time. 30 years, imagine. And she was saw all really interesting manuscripts, met a lot of interesting people and authors, did a lot of fascinating research. Edgar Casey's basically why I learned astrology, because I was studying it when I was down there. I had access to all his literature, all the literature on Atlantis. The library there was phenomenal. So I was there every day because we lived 2 blocks from the Association for Research and Enlightenment. We lived like 2 blocks from there on the beach. No, I'm lying. Across the street from the beach. We had a bungalow across the street from the ocean because the Casey Foundation is on the Atlantic Ocean pretty much in Virginia Beach. Beautiful setting. I learned so much there about occult. That was what gave me my impetus to keep learning, was what I learned down at the foundation. Because I went there every day. I was immersed in it, the library and doing all kinds of studies. So I also was a research assistant on a book that was published about the Edgar Casey medical readings. And that was what got me interested in acupuncture, which I studied later on, became licensed in. So it's all due to Edgar Casey. It all goes back to Edgar. And as Cheryl pointed out, mom and dad, of course, got the ball rolling.
Nice.
So
good for
anyway,
you,
that's it for me, folks.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. All their stuff is in the bottom. Lisa, do you want to plug yourself as well?
Lisa Solis at Instagram and Solis Lisa Twitter.
And thank you so much for everything that you did today. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yes. That was I thought that was wonderful. I really appreciate everything that you all brought. And one more time, I will thank the chat as well. Thank you. And that's what's up to OTR and Flow State. These are the channels we've been jumping on a lot. Thank you. That's what's up. I appreciate it. Go check out their stuff as well. And for people who are watching the replay of the live, I highly suggest to check out the chat as well. And I'm not sure if we're doing part 3 live. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. I don't know. Maybe leave a message. Leave a comment after the show if you prefer to see part 3 live. And maybe I'll think about it depending on how many people say something. I'll do it like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a good possibility though. But thank you. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.